All right. For those of you who don't know him, this is Jacob Clark. He is running for Kentucky House of Representatives for District 18. Where's District 18? I mean, I know where it is, but
that is Grayson County and West Hardin County.
Cool. So I've just known Jacob for maybe 6 months now, 7. But
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but Jacob's a really awesome guy. We've had a lot of really fun conversations, and I think we're going to have fun conversation tonight. And interestingly, we had some fun conversations just leading up to this, because my first pass at title, he's like, no, I don't say minister. I don't like titles. I don't like minister. I don't like reverend. I don't like anything like that. And I'm like, okay, fine. So give me like a 1-word thing to try to describe to people. And he said, brother. And he's like, no, wait, give me a call. So I ended up calling him, and would you mind explaining why that didn't really initially work for you either?
Yeah. So, I believe in, modesty, meekness, and I don't believe in using your Christianity or whatever belief system it is for some kind of advantage, and I wouldn't want to be seen that way. But more importantly, it goes back to Jesus. He called them brothers. He called them friends. They tried to call him master. He wouldn't even let them call him good. He said, don't even call me good. There's only one that's good. That's Father above. So, titles are an issue for me. I think a lot of people try to wear a badge.
Right.
I'm this or I'm that. And interestingly enough, I think that's one of the big problems with our political system that we have, is that it all boils down to, well, what are you? What is your title? What is your name?
Right. And I mean, we don't normally talk about it quite like that, but that is actually, in my mind, such a core libertarian thing, because not all libertarians are anarchists, but we certainly get along with anarchists, and there are certainly some anarchists among our ranks. And if you talk to an anarchist, they'll frequently describe anarchy as no hierarchy. They're trying to avoid hierarchy. So if you think about what you just said, man, you really just flattened the hierarchy a different way. And you kind of pointed out Jesus did too. Jesus flattened the hierarchy.
Right.
I think that is a profound thing, but he kind of let me win out a little bit and include brother in there. I totally agree with his arguments. So if you're tuning in and you're going, yeah, but then you turned around and did it anyway. Well, we did it for what I consider to be a practical reason. The point to the conversation is that Jacob is someone who's active in his religious community. He's passionate about religion, and he's passionate about libertarianism. And we can't, if you just have one or the other, this isn't an interesting conversation. This is only interesting because of the two. This is, never mind interesting, this is only worth listening to, but because of the two. But the real crux of the show is Jacob comes toward separation of, what I always think of as church and state, a little different. And Jacob corrected me on that too. He said church and law, and then I reversed it to law and church. But why not state?
Well, being libertarian, we're half a step away from being peaceful anarchists. And I want to emphasize that, it's not like the movies where it's Mad Max.
Right.
It's not the kind of anarchy anybody's looking for. And but peaceful anarchy. And so yeah.
I was at a libertarian event, and I'm not an anarchist, by the way, but I have a bunch of friends who are, and it's just what Jacob just described. And Nick Sarwark was there, and Nick has a quick way with words if you've never watched Nick. But there was a newcomer to the party there who apparently knew Nick, and this newcomer ended up, and the story would be too long if I told you how it got there, but the newcomer went and talked to one of our anarchist brothers for, maybe an hour. And I'm talking to Nick, and this guy walks up to Nick, and he's just staring at him until Nick turned toward him, and he goes, "I just met an anarchist." And Nick's like, "Uh-huh. No, I mean, he's an actual anarchist." Nick's like, "Uh-huh." And he didn't have any horns or anything, did he? And I mean, it's not, like Jacob said, it's not what you see in the movies. It's just people who don't believe in hierarchy. But moving us forward, go ahead.
Yeah, the state is that hierarchy that you're talking about.
Right.
And so the law, the reason I say law instead, so the law, you have this, before the Constitution, before any of that was established, there's a natural order, there's a natural law that, and the NAP, I think, sums that up great. But the Bible readers would identify with what Jesus said. There was all these commandments. They first started out with 10 commandments, and then the Pharisees add on all kinds of different things. It reminds me of our Congress and legislature, how we start out with something that you can read in one setting before you finish your coffee. Fast forward 200 and something years, and we have all this great big bunch of things. So, but Jesus, they asked him about the law, and he summed it up in two rules. One of them is love God more than anything, and then the next one is basically treat your neighbor as yourself, or love thy neighbor as thyself. So, to me, that's like right along with the NAP, non-aggression principle. And so there's the law. That's the law. Take the state away, and that's what you're left with. Right. Is that people should just not hurt other people and not take their stuff. And that you don't have to be a religious person to align with that and go along with that. And so that should come. What if someone chooses not to be a religious person? We need that common sense, that this inherent order. We talk about inherent rights all the time. There is an inherent law that is just a basic non-aggression principle.
Right.
So that's why I don't like to say the church and state, because there are those out there that would be, clearly they would want to be anarchists, and that presents a problem for them. But they agree also with the non-aggression principle.
You're right. So classically, the normal argument you hear for separation of church and state is simply that so people can worship as they may. But you gave me a really interesting argument for why, even if yours is the dominant religion, even if yours is the religion making the law. Sorry, that's my cat. He wants some attention, I guess.
So the majority religion.
The majority religion, even for that religion, it is bad. It's a bad strategy for them to sorry, Randall's pointing out technical problems. it's a bad strategy for them long term to try to control the law by their religion. So can you explain that? Sorry for that slow intro.
It's okay. So legislating morality, that's what we've had in our country for quite a while. And as far as slippery slopes go, it's a doozy. So I'll run you through the scenario. Let's say maybe in the 50s, maybe there were some things that the churches saw that were going on and were coming up, and they say, we don't want people choosing to live this way. We don't want folks choosing this lifestyle. And so where a Christian should go and pray about it and do things through talking to people and persuasion and things like that. Instead, and I'll use this term a lot, and they become the lazy Christian. Okay. Now I've been the lazy Christian. Okay.
Okay.
They become the lazy Christian. So instead of trying to live it, walk the walk. That's why a lot of people have written off religion, is because they're a bunch of hypocrites, things like this. So we get the lazy Christian. Instead of him wanting to do it the right way and show people through their life, let their light so shine, all these things, they decide it's better to use the law and legislation and force people to not be able to choose these things, or to be a criminal if they do choose these things. Now, some of you out there are probably yelling at me, jumping up and down and screaming right now, but God said through Moses, God said, choose this day life and good, or death and evil. And we see all through scriptures where folks were allowed to choose right, or they were allowed to choose wrong, and they lived with those consequences. And lifelong issues due to those consequences sometimes. And so, it carried weight then when these things happen. So, here we have the lazy Christian, and they want to legislate morality. And so they were happy back in the 50s, say, to turn over this power, this authority to the government, because the government may have been on their side on certain issues. And so here they got the legislation they wanted, and they're patting themselves on the back. Look what we did. We've changed the world. That's kind of where they were at. So they gave this authority to the state for all these different things. And it's intrusion in people's lives. People should be able to choose whatever they want to do peacefully, whether it aligns with the way I want to live or not. But you fast forward now, here we are in 21st century, and so now government has these authorities, and they're ruling against what a lot of the churches want. These so-called conservatives, they want to call themselves conservatives, and they now they're not happy with what government is doing with this new authority that they've given them. And so you get this back and forth and everything. But honestly, these issues, is something wrong? You look like—
Sorry, I shouldn't have. Andrew, could you expand upon that just a little bit? We've got a part of the question, but I don't understand it. Sorry, proceed.
Well, I'll finish this up. So now we've got with this power that we've given to the state to legislate these things, and the churches are upset with it, and they've got all these people to blame, but they should blame themselves. They wanted to turn it over to the government to legislate what they think is moral and right, and there you go. Now they've got the power, and they're doing it their way, and it can really be a slippery slope. So government needs to be out of those decisions, and if we want to reach out to somebody, or even better, way to look at it, if they want to reach out to the church and say, what, is my life need to be? What do you think about this? I get that a lot. People say, what do you think about this? What do you believe that the Bible says about this? And sometimes I have to tell them, buckle up. And here's what I think it believes. Now it's up to you though to believe it. That's the whole basis. My religious beliefs are my beliefs, and Scripture even says that it's for believers. These things are for believers. So anyway, if there's a question, go ahead with that or whatever.
He never really. All he said is you still have to take a stand one way or the other.
Sure, and you can, but here's what folks need to understand: when you want something to be a law, okay, you have to be willing to accept the fact that somebody might get killed over that law. It could mean death for somebody, and I'm talking about even a seatbelt law. It could escalate and it could get so that someone ends up being killed and because of a seatbelt law. And I know there's all kinds of things where somebody might say, well, they should have done this and they should have done that and everything. But
there are actually cases of that.
Yes, there are.
Right. And this was before the seatbelt law, but my mother was in a auto accident when she was extremely young, and she was thrown through the windshield, which is bad. But there ended up being a lot of heavy tools that had been in the back of the car that were in the front seat after the wreck. And people who say, well, if not for this or if this, they don't really know. You can't prove the counterfactual. But, the experts, if there are experts in such things on the scene, argued that had she had her seatbelt on, the equipment would have killed her. And, this is before seatbelt laws. This has nothing to do with seatbelt laws. It's just I always grew up knowing that, and then they passed seatbelt laws, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. But yeah, you sometimes have like there was a case in, I think it was Cincinnati, where a gentleman was getting pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt, and he had a bench warrant on him, which ended up being for something really minor. But when you see that there's a warrant, you don't necessarily know that. And this guy got out of the car a little more aggressively than the police officers were prepared for, and he ended up getting shot. But I mean, like you said, it's not any specific law. It's any law. So when you're making any law, you have to be willing to come to terms that somebody somewhere eventually is going to die for that. So you better make sure that you're doing it for a good reason. You better make sure you're doing more good than harm. And looping it back to religion, if you're doing it for religious reasons, people who don't believe as you or feel as you do, they don't, that's not a justification to them.
Right. So what religion should be protected, in America? I guess I'm going to interview myself. I say we, so Christians,
right.
We see ourselves as being the majority religion in America. And that's fine, but that and maybe that's true, but it may not be true. Someday that might not be true. Our country is unique. It's not like any place in the world in that it in that we have this freedom of religion. Now, some say it's a freedom from religion. Yeah, we don't want to force it on anybody or anything like that. They don't really get it for real anyway. Like, going back to the lazy Christian thing, if we cram it down someone's throat, then are they really converted, or did you just like force them into a false profession?
Right.
We see that sometimes. So,
so how many souls did Torquemada and the Inquisition save?
yeah. So, we don't want to be like that, and we say we're not. So, going back to taking a stand, definitely that's why we need freedom of religion, so that in our personal capacities, we can take a stand. We can go protest about issues that we feel like are important. We definitely can. But as far as government, we don't want to give that. We don't want to give that authority to government for them to be able to regulate that. Think about how, let's see, what can we relate this to? Gun rights. Let's just use that, So, honestly, there shouldn't be any gun laws coming from government, period, end of story. According to the Second Amendment, government never had the authority to come in and regulate gun rights. That amendment was written to the government saying, no, this is something you stay away from. So any regulations should come from the private sector. Be it gun dealers might come together and form some kind of coalition saying that they don't want people to get harmed, and so they're not going to sell XYZ guns or whatever, and that should come from the private sector. But think about if we did religion like they have guns. If they say, well, this is not allowed in America, that's not allowed in America, and so the Christians from the 50s and 60s that loved the authority that they gave the government on religion, they might be happy at first. Hey, now there's certain religions that are getting blocked, but like I said, it's a slippery slope. Eventually, when you beg for these kind of laws, that's what people do. Something happens, they beg government for a law. Christians ought to be ashamed of that mess, because we're supposed to have faith in God and beg God to do these things and ask God to do these things. And so they ought to be ashamed of themselves when they're begging politicians to make these laws that so they can pat themselves on the back and say, well, look what we did.
Because if you have the law, if you have the government fulfill your prayers, then who have you made God?
Exactly. So now they are pleading to and worshiping government instead of God. And it may feel good at first. You might get your way at first, but I promise when we beg for laws, eventually that law is going to be used against us.
Well, I mean, what about people who are, and this is true for some of my friends. I have some friends who are really worried about people coming into this country from other religions, from other places with other religions. And of course they get called racist. And I don't buy that, because it's not racist, because it's based on the other person's religion, not their skin tone. But, to me, they strike me as paranoid, but doesn't, I mean, what if you become outnumbered? What if the dominant religion, doesn't feel as you do? Do you feel a need to keep people of other religions out?
Right. So that's the slippery slope I'm talking about. When you turn that authority over to the government, here's the way I'm looking at everything. Going into this, if I get elected to this office, any bill that comes up, in my mind, I'm going to be thinking, what is the worst possible scenario that this can be applied? No kidding.
Right.
And you got to do that. And so, if we give the government authority to say what Bible can be used, there's different versions of the Bible. So we give the government authority to determine which Bible is the American Bible that we're going to use in America. So at first, we might be okay with the one they choose. But now that we've given them that authority, what if they change their mind later? What if they decide now that they have that authority that, they're just going to eliminate it altogether? So, that's maybe not a great example, but you got to think about these things. So, one good thing is to bring up is the churches that get tax write-offs. So I'm against that. I'm against those kind of things.
Well, that's cheating. You're against the taxes to begin with.
I'm against taxes to begin with, for sure. I would like everybody to get tax write-offs. What I mean is, I guess I should rephrase. What I mean is trying to use that to get some kind of special privilege. Basically, what they're doing is setting themselves up. Here's what I predict.
It's certainly resented. There are a lot of people out there who resent it.
Hey, that's reason enough not to do that. But here's what I predict. I predict that sometime in the future, government is going to say, you know what, if we're helping you out and we're doing giving you these different advantages, here's the kind of curriculum we want taught in your religious schools. Here's the kind of things that you can't preach about in your sermons.
Oh, we could get there so easy. So easy.
Yeah. So that's why we should, Christians should be the last ones begging government to step in.
Let me help paint this picture just a little. Sorry. So the people who are afraid of the Muslims, well, they know, it's violent. So you crack down on preaching certain forms of violence. And, once you're cracking down on preaching certain things, you see how easy that bleeds over.
Right. So, a church should be able to preach whatever they want to, get as crazy as you want to. We got freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Why would we want the government stepping in? Here's the thing. If I believe in the God that I serve, in the one that I preach about and all these things, and he is powerful like I say he is, why does he need a helping hand from the government?
Right.
Why does he need government to come in and tell people that, hey, this is the only one? It should speak for itself, and it does when done the right way. It should speak for itself. So I just go back to the lazy Christian. They want to use government to promote their ideas when the product needs to sell itself. That's one thing I've learned in sales. Product, it should sell itself. Right. What you've got to do is just advertise. Here it is. So I've been in some great church services, and I'm sold on it, and it wasn't because government told me to.
So David Patterson had a question. Basically, he wants to know how you feel about the contradictions between the Kentucky Constitution, which states that people's freedom to practice religion, and the governor's order to pursuant to Kentucky Revised Statute 39A, which is the law pertaining to the governor's executive. Or in other words, how do you feel about the governor keeping people from going to church?
So the contradiction here is about assembling together. I'm assuming that's the point he's trying to get to, is the physical coming together. And how do I feel about it? Okay, well, I mean, going back to libertarian principles, I believe that people should make their own decisions on their own safety and the safety of their loved ones. And, there's so many different variables. A person in rural Kentucky versus someone in downtown New York City. So there's so many different variables to consider that government is not going to be able to sit down and hash them all out for each individual person. That's always on you. Each individual, you always have to figure out this for yourself. So government's role in this thing should have been to provide accurate information about the risks and the effective precautions that an individual can take. The end. That's all government really. I'm going to even say that's all they ever had the authority to do. Now they went ahead and done some things outside of that authority, and we're seeing the effects of that thanks to Mr. Chris Wiest and some of his lawsuits that he has prevailed on.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah. So, but it's just an absurd notion to think that our governor could send out a decree that's going to keep everybody safe and them still retain their civil liberties.
Well, what I loved about your answer is none of that involved religion. I mean, you just totally told why, they should be able to have church service, and you didn't invoke anything about religion at all. It was assembly and people having the right to make decisions for themselves. But that's another topic, is because anyone who knows me, I'm huge on no victim,
no crime.
Right. So no, we didn't practice that. Well, that one time at state, but no victim, no crime. But a lot of people make really bad decisions for themselves. And a lot of Christians seem to feel that it's their place to protect people from themselves. We saw this with prohibition. We see this with the war on drugs. But isn't there a point somewhere where as a Christian you're compelled to protect someone from themselves? I understand it from the libertarian perspective, but sorry, go ahead. You got it.
Absolutely. We want to change hearts and help people realize a better way. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, when is the last time that a law changed your heart? Okay. I work with addicts. I do a ministry at the jail, mm-hmm. and I work with addicts down there, mostly addicts. It's not just addicts, but they're mostly addicts. And I've learned a lot about the connections between addiction and mental health, child trauma, things like that. And it sounds crazy, but putting somebody in a cage it's not actually treating the root problem.
Right.
So, do they get their heart changed? Well, if somebody comes in and delivers that, but just being in the cage doesn't do the heart changing. And I actually say that being in the cage, it's kind of like college for criminals. Sometimes they learn things and make connections. These are their words. I'm not making this up. These are their words. And so we want to change hearts, and that's not done through legislation. I'm sorry.
Right.
One good example I'll use. So I'm going through Facebook a while back, and I see this horrendous picture of the roof of someone's mouth. Okay. And the roof of their mouth, I forget what that's called, palate maybe, is totally just gone. Right. And it shows this picture, and it has a few words talking about how this is from cocaine addiction, right? And I thought, wow, that's what that does to you. And just in an instant, I said, that right there change, I've never done cocaine or anything like that, never had a desire to, but that image and information right there in that instant made me dead set that I didn't want to do that, and I didn't want anybody, and the law didn't. So I imagine this teenager, at a party, nobody's around, nobody would ever know if they tried this cocaine, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what is the law going to do in that moment in time? Nobody's ever going to know. What's the law going to do?
Right.
And it, it might have a little deterrent, but man, you want to really help somebody not go down that road. Education, information, persuasion. Those are the things that really gets it done. There's an individual in one of my services, and we really connected. And he told me, he said, he talked about his addiction to heroin, and he said that he watched 8 friends die from overdose.
Wow.
8 friends, and he said it was just so changing, so life changing. He said he went and got training, CPR training. Okay. And this man actually told me that he was able to save 2 of his friends after that, do CPR until the medics got there and helped them. And that's pretty powerful story right there. And just telling that, and folks out there listening,
Right.
just me and you having this conversation and somebody listening to those 2 stories I told about addiction, that I know, I believe that will help somebody sometime in their life to change their mind about trying something that they might get addicted to, way more than a law. Laws don't work anyway. Look at
Right.
you mentioned the alcohol prohibition. It birthed the mafia and the mob and the illegal alcohol sales and the violence surrounding that. It brought all that into existence. And then when that was lifted, we see that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
When's the last time a gang, shot up another gang over a bad alcohol deal?
Right.
We don't see those problems. So, man, it's a crazy and radical notion to think that people could make their own decisions about their own selves, but it really is the right choice.
Yeah, I've sometimes pointed out to people that you hardly ever see Walgreens do a drive-by shooting at a CVS pharmacy. It doesn't happen.
And the most harmful things are perfectly legal. That's what's crazy.
Absolutely.
The prescription drugs. I mean, here in Kentucky, we're ravaged with addiction to prescription drugs that a person can, if you go through the right motions, you can obtain it perfectly legally. So we're obviously going at some things the wrong way, but changing hearts. I mean, you've got you talk about what is it that's your slogan there? You got like a three phrase.
Oh,
something about
free to love. Yeah, free to love, free to live, free to prosper.
Right. So, what converted me to be a Christian, it wasn't some man in a suit and a Bible screaming and yelling at me. It wasn't those things. It was the love of God. It was the love of people concerned about other people to the point that they were willing to expend their own energy and go places without being paid for it, and try to persuade me into a better way. So that's what works, and that's what I like about being a libertarian is, that's what actually gets things done. Now, superficially, you can legislate a morality and look at it and say, man, it looks like we really did something, and it may take a few off the top of the number there, but it's just a superficial solution. It doesn't really get the root of the problem.
So we've got another question.
Okay.
Now, Andrew, I'm going to tell you, our first idea on what to do a show on was just abortion. We were going to do a show on nothing but abortion, and we thought we're going to do abortion, and then we're going to do a show on separation of the law and the state. Sorry, the law and church. And then I'm like, let's get the separation clear first.
Yeah. But we knew.
And I promise you, Andrew, Jacob doesn't dodge this. Jacob takes this head on. He threatens at the end, or threatens a strong word, but he warns you, your answer will determine how he votes. But
Right.
Okay, brother Jacob. I think he meant we know each other very well.
Right.
You're against laws that push our moralities. So I have a question. If you are elected and a bill is brought up to ban abortion in Kentucky, how would you vote?
All right. Well, I really like being in the Libertarian Party. And they say that there's always one thing that you get to deviate from. And this may be my one thing. And if the Libertarian Party doesn't want me anymore, I can absolutely understand that. But I've debated abortion a lot with lots of different folks, and I absolutely believe that you have to leave religion out of the abortion debate with non-believers. So if I believe in my Bible front to back, but if you're a non-believer, what kind of weight would any arguments coming from that have? It probably not very much. So, I've done some studying on it and looking at it from a standpoint of what a non-believer looks at, and there's plenty of science. There's plenty of science to support the fact that abortion violates the NAP, and so the real question, when you get outside religion, the real question becomes, when does life begin? Okay, and so that's where folks, some might say, well, only in the case of rape, and only before 6 weeks, only before the heartbeat, and all these things, and that's the part that is kind of up in the air. But I am totally against abortion, and yes, anything that would keep that from happening, I'd be on board with. Now, what people need to realize is that, and well, let me explain why I am against abortion without religion. So,
well, do you want to save that for next time, or just?
It's a huge issue. Let's do this. I'll just answer the question. Yes, I'm totally against abortion, and I would vote for legislation that would keep that from happening, because I believe it's a violation of the NAP.
I think that's a really good answer, and I'm wondering now, like, if we assemble an entire panel, I don't know what that's going to look like, but we'll. There's a lot of people want to talk about that, and we're not afraid to talk about that at all.
I'm definitely not afraid to talk about it and explain that further. So,
and anybody who isn't like really into the party, like if you don't know, so. Like I'm anecdotally one of the people on the membership review committee. Yeah, Jacob's membership's not going to be reviewed by this. It's just not. It's not.
I mean, so be it. I am what I am.
Right. That's the thing. I think you're an extremely principled libertarian, and I'm really glad you joined me for this. I'm sorry, I'm still kind of getting the hang of this. Hopefully I'll be a better host next time you're on. Anybody else have any more questions for Jacob before we go? I mean, I think he's described the foundation of everything, the way he thinks so well that you can almost answer questions on your own. But all right, cool. Jacob, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for providing us another perspective into libertarianism, because that's one of the things I love about our party is we all got here from so many different paths. And I love that. I mean, you expressed something today that David Patterson couldn't have got last night. I certainly could not have expressed it the way you did. And even if I did, it wouldn't have had the sincerity it has when you did. So I don't know how the viewers felt, but I felt you did a really, really great job.
Thank you.
If anybody has any questions, because not everybody's viewing live, send them in, and depending on the body of questions, maybe we'll have another show, or maybe we'll just reply via text. But we'll get them answered. Yeah. So, all right.
I have a question.
Oh,
what office are you running for?
I'm running for U.S. House of Representatives for Kentucky's 2nd district. So Jacob is actually a down ballot candidate of mine.
Yeah.
So definitely.
I just wanted you to plug yourself.
Yeah, I'm not real. Well, I'm so excited about everything you're talking about. I'm so excited about what everybody else is doing. I forget I'm supposed to kick in for myself, which reminds me, where can they see your site? Where can they donate? Do you have a place people can donate?
Yeah. So the website is www.clark4kentucky.com. So that's Clark 4 KY.com. And there's my platform and different things that I plan to do. and I can talk about all my plans that I have for the district. I can talk about that for an hour. But there's some outlines of those things on the site, and there is a donate button. And looks like Kyle plugged it for me. Kyle's awesome. Thank you, Kyle.
Kyle's very awesome.
And so definitely check that out. Please, if you got any questions, hit me up. I'm definitely open to do a town hall or something like that. People say, are you Republican or are you Democrat? And I have to go through this whole spiel, and then they still want to know, yeah, but are you, which one you side with? And all. Listen, freedom is not political. That's what's wrong with our country, is everybody is at each other's throats. What you don't realize is that they're kicked back in DC, loving it, that people are so polarized and divided. Even in Frankfurt, to some degree, they're kicked back, and it makes it easy to control you when all they've got to do is take that one issue and wave it out there on the end of like a carrot on the stick, and they've got you, and you're going to vote for them, and you're scared to death to vote for anybody else. So, taking those powers of all that regulation away from government, putting it back in the hands of the people, that's what's going to give us our freedom back. Freedom is not political.
Yeah, and that's actually, we've never discussed it before, but that's both where peace is prosperity came from. It's the idea of, I wanted to say love thy neighbor some way different. I was trying to say love your neighbor and you'll prosper.
Right.
And Randall Daniel said peace is prosperity. And I'm like, oh, I love that. So that's where that came from. And then free to love, free to live, free to prosper is really the same thing stated a different way.
Yeah.
We don't want government creating all these divides between us. We want to be free to love our neighbor. And once you love your neighbor, you're going to be safe, because you have you taking care of you. You have your neighbor taking care of you. That's how communities form. Communities come from mutual love. This is what makes you safe. not somebody in Frankfurt, not somebody in DC. What makes you safe?
They don't even know you.
Right. It's your neighbors who love you who make you safe. And through working together through that, that's where prosperity comes from. So free to love, free to live, free to prosper. See, I did plug myself. All right.
Anytime you want to, go in depth on that issue, definitely. I know that's something that a lot of people, they want to know about. What's a libertarian? Think about that, and we can definitely go into that. But it's a big issue.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me. We're definitely going to have you back sometime. And I'd like to thank everybody for, get my hand closer. I'd like to thank everybody for watching, and let us know if you have any questions. We'll get them answered. Have a great night, everyone. Bye-bye.